All right, we still have a little bit left in this regular season. Then there's playoffs. No specific time yet, although we're hoping it's this weekend to start. So, Jeff Hathhorn, better opponent for the Penguins in the first round. Would it be the Islanders? Would it be Boston? Who would you rather them avoid?
Boy. You know, it's tough here, really, for me, because I think be careful what you wish for, because everybody's going to say the Islanders. And this is a veteran hockey team that, yes, is playing some bad hockey right now, but they've got a lot of experience and they've got a veteran coach. But I'd be crazy to say that you'd want to play the Boston Bruins. I'd want to avoid the Boston Bruins. And if for no other reason, then in the second round, you wouldn't have to play either the Capitals or the Bruins. Yeah, I'm careful knowing that the Islanders do have a team that could potentially turn it on. They've got some scoring, they've got some speed, and they've got a great coach. But I would avoid Boston to play the Islanders.
Yeah, this isn't the best division in hockey for nothing, guys. No matter who the Penguins play, it's going to be an enormous challenge. And if you know your Penguins history, you know series against the Islanders very often don't end well for Pittsburgh. But yeah, Jeff is right. Boston is one of the best teams in hockey right now. They're really hot. They're a matchup nightmare for the Penguins. Mike Sullivan loves to play his top line against the other team's best line, which is usually great. But it's not great when the other team's best line happens to be better. And as great as Crosby's line is, I would take Patrice Bergeron's line over that line. I think Tuukka Rask has been in the Penguins' heads for years. And I think the Bruins have been in their heads for years. They know what buttons to push. Chris Letang loses his mind at least once every game when he sees Brad Marchand. They know how to get the Penguins off their game. I think Pittsburgh-Boston would be a 50-50 series. I think it would be an exceptional series. But I think for both teams' sakes, they'd rather play in the second round because the Islanders and especially the Capitals both look very vulnerable to me right now. I don't think there's any question the Penguins and Bruins are the two best teams in the division, and they'd prefer to avoid each other as long as they could.
Yeah, let's not overthink this here. Like, I get it. I get the history. I get why it's very recent history. Only 2 years ago, they got swept. But the Penguins are 6-2 against the Islanders this year. The Islanders are 6-7-2 in their past 15 with 33 goals scored in that time. It's barely 2 goals a game. They're only 13-11-2 since March 16th. The other day was only their 7th regulation win in their past 26. They haven't been that good. They got off to that good start. They beat up on the Sabres a lot early in the season, beat up on the Devils early in the season, and they've not been that good the past. We're going on almost 2 months now. So, you shouldn't overthink this. And I'm getting kind of, listen, all due respect to Barry Trotz, it's great. He's won a cup, and I get he's won 7 of his last 9 series, okay? And he's kind of taking this overachieving sort of team with the Islanders. But people act like Barry Trotz is Glenn Sather, rapping Scotty Bowman. I mean, the guy was 5-10 in the playoffs in series before. He never made it past the second round until we won the cup there with Washington. And the Penguins beat him 2 years in a row. They lost to him then 2 years in a row. But again, I'm not going to trash the guy, but I'm getting a little bit like, okay, yes, Barry Trotz. He's not unbeatable in the playoffs, all right? Let's put that narrative to bed here, all right?
Yeah, but goaltending, Varlamov has been good, and he's one of those guys who, when he gets on a roll, he could be tough too, which I think is the thing that could derail the Penguins the most. That's something I want to ask you guys. Jeff, back to you, because goaltending, we have not seen Tristan Jarry in high-stakes poker. We have not seen Casey DeSmith in this sort of situation. That doesn't mean they can't do it, but I think the Capitals have issues in goal. I think Josh is correct that Tuukka Rask could be an advantage, and I think Varlamov can too. What would derail the Penguins? Is it goaltending or something else, Jeff?
I like the phrase you use, high-stakes poker. I think if they start playing a high-stakes game, and they figure that they're going to make pretty plays, they're going to play up and down with teams, especially if they play the Islanders, that they're going to get into some kind of running game with the Islanders like we've seen in a couple of these blowouts. That is not the recipe for the Penguins to advance in the playoffs. They need to continue to play that straight-ahead game, that game they played without Evgeny Malkin, with Malkin in there, and when they get Tanev back and Rodriguez, I mean, they're going to have a hell of a lineup, but they've got to play the right way. It's not just about the pieces, it's about playing the right way. If they play the right way, they could beat anybody. If they don't, they could be out in the first round.
Well, I agree, Jeff, and Bob, you mentioned Tristan Jarry. He's just kind of a mystery. He's a legitimate number 1 goaltender, I believe, but you're right. He's only played 1 playoff game. We don't know what to expect from him. But when I look at the Penguins, we cannot ignore what their one big blemish has been all season, and that's their penalty killing. Go look at the other teams that are qualifying for the postseason. They all have significantly better penalty killing units than do the Penguins, who have been really pretty consistently below average all season long. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's the playoffs. They're not going to call any penalties anyway. And while it's true the penalties are way down around the league during the past month, especially in Penguins games, if you look at the last few seasons, actually penalties, especially in the first round, have been pretty high. They call a lot because they get yelled at by the league right before the playoffs. Hey, you might want to call penalties again. So there will be some power plays for each team, no matter who the Penguins play in this series. And the penalty killing, boy, that can derail a series in a hurry. They need to be a lot better in that regard.
Josh, I was going to say exactly that. The penalty killing. Also, maybe whether it's just sort of aberrations or not. These games. I mean, there's a lot of 7-goal games they've been allowing. It seems like, and they've been generally gooder than that. But just for whatever reason, they've blown up. And you could explain away each of them and say it's not going to happen. But one thing I just want to say about Tristan Jarry, and I get it. Yes, sir, he's an unknown, and we don't know. Maybe he will completely implode or have a bad playoff or something. But again, going back to narratives, this idea that you have to have a veteran goalie. I mean, Jordan Binnington, were people saying the St. Louis Blues a strength was going to be goaltending 2 years ago? Cam Ward. I mean, history has littered these stories of these goalies. Matt Murray, for that matter, that have no track record and don't have a history and are rookies or whatever it might be, and they go on playoff runs. I'm not saying Tristan Jarry necessarily will. I'm just saying I don't necessarily think that that's this huge weakness necessarily, as opposed to some of the other teams they're going to face.
All right, have 1 minute now. Stick to your times here, guys, about 15 seconds each. Tom Wilson, did the punishment fit the crime, or did they have it all wrong in the NHL? Josh, you first.
Well, of course they have it all wrong. He's been borderline criminal his entire career, and everyone said, well, you knew they weren't going to suspend him. It's the NHL. No, they even surprised me. I thought he was really going to receive a heavy suspension, and he should have.
The punishment did not fit the crime because he's still playing. The fact that he's still playing is a crime itself.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack with this in 15 seconds, especially to say. But I've heard the excuse that there isn't really a rule against grabbing somebody's hair and slamming it. I've literally heard that be the justification. If there isn't anything in the rule book that says you can't grab somebody's hair and slam his head off the ice, which is just that's all I got to say about it. It's just the theater of the absurd sometimes.
Yeah, I have flashbacks of Troy Polamalu having his hair pulled on a return after an interception. Anyway. We have more coming up on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. That would be the Steelers, speaking of Troy. What did they do in this draft, and are they better off now ahead of teams like the Browns and the Ravens? That's next as we continue right here. It's the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.